Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Viviana Valencia, and I'm the Executive Coordinator at CALDO. We're continuing with the series Studying Canada, and for this series, the CALDO Consortium has invited the graduate studies departments or schools from each of our 10 member universities so that you may have an opportunity to learn about their institution as well as to ask questions in relation to their academic requirements. Before we start the webinar, I would like to request our audience, if there is something you would like to ask our presenter, please note your question in the box labeled Q&A at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the presentation, we will have about 10 to 15 minutes to answer some of those questions. And so you will see two boxes, one that is the chat and the other one that is the Q&A. So please note them in the Q&A, and I see that people are already submitting questions there. Thank you very much. Before we start, I would like to briefly introduce you to CALDO. So CALDO is a consortium composed of 10 of Canada's U15 leading universities, distinguished from other Canadian universities because of their strong research focus. Our members consist of the University of Alberta, the University of Calgary, Dalhousie University, Université Laval, McMaster University, the University of Ottawa, the University of Saskatchewan, the University of Toronto, the University of Waterloo, and Western University. But what do we do at CALDO? So CALDO, we offer a range of free services to prospective students interested in pursuing graduate studies in Canada. Some of the services are assistance with the steps to apply for graduate programs at any of our 10 member universities, guidance on how to contact professors, supervisors, information on academic requirements, also information on scholarships through our founding members. And I would like to also take a few minutes to draw your attention to our website. There you can find a wide array of tools that could help you with your application. Some of those tools that we have there are, for example, the steps to apply to a graduate program. You may also find some testimonials from former and current graduate students from Latin America that will help you to better understand and prepare for this experience. We also are going to have, I'd like to take this opportunity to let you know that in the month of August, we're gonna have another webinar with the students from Latin America, so they could talk to you about their experience, the challenges and the opportunities that they have found while completing their degree here in Canada. So going back to our website, the other thing that I would like to show you very briefly is our contact form. If after visiting our website you still have questions about requirements or questions about programs, you can fill out this form. You will find it as a pop-up on our website, and our program coordinator will be contacting you with more information on your specific questions. Also, if you go to our main website, you will find a search engine that is very, very helpful, where you can type, let's say I'm interested in studying mechanical engineering at a master's level, and you will see all the different programs within that area that are offered our 10 member universities. Okay, with this introduction, I would like now to present our main speaker, who is Jasmine Smart. Jasmine is the graduate officer, admissions officer at Dalhousie University. Jasmine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. I'm going to leave lots of time for questions at the end, so please do type in your questions. Viviana will very kindly be compiling those for the question and answer period, and I'd love to be able to answer all of your questions. So please, whatever you'd like to know, put your questions in. So a little bit about Dalhousie University. I would also love to hear from people if they're familiar with the university, familiar with the city, whatever you know. I'm always interested in finding out how much awareness you have of our university, or honestly just of Halifax or Nova Scotia. So very broad strokes, there are about 19,000 students total. Of those, 4,300 are master's or PhD students. For the entire university, 22% are international students. For masters and PhD, that's about 33%. We have 26 research centers and institutes and more than 140 masters and PhD programs. We also have more than $156 million of funded research annually, 91 Rhodes Scholars, and more than 135,000 alumni, plus 4 campuses in 2 cities, which I'll be telling you a bit more about in this presentation. Again, if there's any of our campuses that you have questions about, I'm not going to be talking too much about the smaller campuses like St. John's. So if any of you are looking at the medical programs there, please put the question in the chat box and I'm happy to talk about it. So I don't know if you see this very small blue area on the map. That is the province of Nova Scotia. And we are in the city of Halifax. That's also the picture in the background, which is the capital of Nova Scotia. So just in case people aren't familiar with the city, I have a little bit of general information. The population is about 425,000, which I imagine for some of you is going to seem like a very tiny city. It's the fastest growing city in Canada. Atlantic Canada's most multicultural city. Atlantic Canada is the ones on the side of the Atlantic Ocean. So it does make sense, but is not something that people outside of Canada tend to be familiar with, because why would they be? So both are Studley, that's the engineering, and Carleton, that's the medical. Campuses are between a 5 and a 15-minute walk from the downtown core. Actually, that picture you saw in the very last slide, that included our Studley campus. So as you see, it is not far from things. Sexton campus, which is the arts, social sciences, sciences, and humanities campus, and also where I work, is located right in the downtown. Oh, sorry, Sexton. That is the engineering campus. Studley is the one for arts, social sciences, sciences, and humanities. And the city of Halifax has 5 different universities, so there's a great deal of student life. We also have a campus in Truro. That's where the Faculty of Agriculture is housed. Truro is a charming small town with about a 12,000 person population. It's the only campus in all of Canada with an on-site teaching farm. The farm's wonderful. Even if you are not part of agriculture, you can be invited to go into the barns. You can go up for research day. They have some pretty cute calves and lambs, and it's all rather adorable, speaking to someone who is not very familiar with agricultural science. It's close to nature with a beautiful trail system in a river valley. And it was voted the #1 friendliest community in Canada's Atlantic provinces, which is saying something because the Atlantic provinces are a bit Canadian stereotyped as friendly to over-friendly. So you'll see in our specialties, including things like the Ocean Tracking Network, OCERA, the Masters in Marine Management, Oceanography, some really interesting work in engineering on, oh my goodness, what are the name of the turbines in the ocean? Tidal power. That our geographic location is hugely influential, not just to the experience of living in Halifax, but also to the research that Dalhousie does. And as it's summer, it doesn't hurt to be about a half-hour drive from the beach. It's not the worst. So I'm sure people have questions about the current COVID-19 situation. What I can tell you for sure is that in September, all courses, except some of the ones for which, some of the courses for which the program certification requires hands-on training, so things like medical school, everyone else is going to be remote. So if you're in a very specific accredited program, please reach out to find out if your program will be in person. You can also find that out at this first link on my screen. But for everyone else, fall classes are going to be online only. I hope that anyone who's interested will keep sort of abreast of news. The top link is for master's and PhD programs. It talks about what's happening at Dalhousie University. And the second link talks about what the state of things is in Halifax more generally. So please feel free to ask me your questions. Obviously, I am not an epidemiologist and I have no, specific knowledge about it. But what I can tell you about Halifax at the moment is that it's been just more than 2 weeks with no cases. And for the moment, they are easing restrictions. They're now allowing small gatherings and also larger socially distanced gatherings. They've recently reopened stores and restaurants. So everyone's feeling pretty positive at the moment, but please keep an eye on the news. I do not know what will be happening by the time you come to study. And yes, no promises that I'll know the answer, but please feel free to put in your COVID-related questions in the Q&A. So graduate programs. We have more than 95 master's programs and more than 45 PhD programs. The 12 faculties we have are agriculture, architecture and planning. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Arts and social sciences, computer science, dentistry, engineering, interdisciplinary, health professions, journalism, law, management, medicine, and science. So 95 master's programs is a lot to choose from. 45 PhDs, probably at that point, you already know what it is you're pursuing. But we do have a form that you can fill out. It lets you choose all the programs you're interested in, and it'll send you a program sheet for each one. So you'll be able to compare the programs one to another. To get to the sheet, went the wrong direction, my apologies. Please go to this first link here, this dal.ca/grad info sheets. And the other thing you can do is you can look at a full list of our programs under dal.ca/faculty/grad studies/programs. So when you look at the programs, one of the things, since I'm assuming a lot of you are looking at research, that I would highly recommend is look at the research that each faculty is doing and look at the research that the various supervisors are doing. So on each website, it'll list the professors who work for that department, and it'll talk a bit about the research they do. If anyone has questions, please ask. So a common question we get is, how do you put together a strong graduate application? The first thing you're going to want to do, obviously, is apply. Please do that online. And also make sure that you have all the supporting documents. So get in touch with the department that you're applying to or look at their website. So the first steps to apply are you send in your application form, you send in your supporting documents to the department you're applying to, you pay your application fee, and if you're planning to write a thesis, it's highly recommended that you get in touch with the supervisor you want to work with. Unfortunately, faculty do have other commitments and labs sometimes don't have capacity. When I did my master's at Dalhousie, I was lucky to be able to work with a supervisor I had hoped to work with, but one of my cohorts was very much looking forward to working with someone who was on sabbatical. So of course, she couldn't be under their supervision. So to avoid any disappointments, please get in touch with the supervisor you want to work with, even if your program doesn't require it. If you're doing a PhD, absolutely get in touch with your potential supervisor. If you're doing a master's, it's generally not required, but especially if there's one area that you're most interested in, or if there's a lab that you really want to work in, make sure there's capacity in the lab, make sure the supervisor you want to work with will be available. So if people have questions about how to connect, again, please put your questions in the Q&A. I'm happy to talk, or to hear other people's experiences getting in touch with supervisors. So the next step is that the department will evaluate all of the different applications they receive. So they'll review everyone's applications and they will decide which students they want to recommend. So if you're applying for computer science will choose which applicants they want to go forward. Only after the department has chosen do your documents come up to me. I'm one of the admissions officers. So I'll be looking over your file, making sure everything is correct, and then approving your admission and requesting that you get your admission letter. A very common question, very understandably, is how long will things take? And unfortunately, it depends on which program you're applying for. Some programs evaluate each application as they come in. Some programs, for instance, we have a number of health programs that are only allowed to offer a certain number of seats, and those seats are allocated according to province and international. So they collect all the applications for the year, look at them all at once, and then choose their successful candidates. So for a program like that, the question will be, when are they reviewing applications? Whereas if you're applying to a program with rolling admissions, it'll be a question of when the admissions committee next meets. So I'm sorry, basically I don't have an answer for you. What I can tell you is once the department has made a decision, you'll have your answer in about 1 week. So supporting documents. Obviously, if you're applying for this coming fall or winter, we understand you might not be able to get paper transcripts issued by your university. If that's the case, for the moment, we're accepting unofficial scanned transcripts. We would ideally like those to be sent directly from the issuing university. If that's not possible, please get in touch and we'll figure something out. That is only for this coming year. Anyone looking to apply in the future, please check back with us. I think we're all hoping that the COVID situation will be different, if not over by then. So we're only making decisions about this coming year. Anything further than that, please check back with us. So reference letters. Most departments require 2 academic reference letters. That's from course professors, current supervisors, potentially people that you've been a research assistant for, people that you've interacted with in a scholarly capacity who've supervised your work or graded your work. If, for instance, you are applying for the Master's of Business Administration and you have been graduated for 30 years and working in business, the situation is different. We're happy to have professional references. But for anyone who's graduated recently and is going into a thesis-based program, it'll be academic reference letters. If you're not sure what you need, get in touch with the department you're applying to. We are asking that everyone use the electronic reference system if possible. If your referee for any reason can't use that, we will accept emailed references or potentially paper references, though at the moment that's not something we're really seeing. But it's not impossible. And again, if they can't use the e-reference system, you can get in touch with the department you're applying to. The important thing to know about the electronic reference system is that when you fill out the online application form, you need to put in your referee's email address correctly, please. So we can't go back and change it. If you forget to, put the .com after the email address, unfortunately, they will have to email their reference letter and they can't use the e-ref system. Yes, any questions about reference letters or about how to request a good reference, please put questions in the end. So for other things you might need for supporting documents, a few programs are looking for the GRE test. They may be offering you an exception for that this particular year. Please talk to them about that. If you did not attend a university taught fully in English in a country where English is one of the national languages, then we will require an ESL test score. So what we're seeing at the moment is mostly the TOEFL at home test. We also accept lots of other tests. We accept the IELTS, the CAEL, the Pearson. There's a full listing of them on our website. So have a look and yeah, see which test works for you. Another option that I'll talk a little bit more about is Dalhousie University does have an English for Academic Purposes program. For graduate studies in general, completing that program with a grade of at least A- in level 2 will complete your ESL requirements with no additional testing. Some programs do have a higher ESL requirement, so you might need to complete that with an A or an A+. Again, please get in touch if that's something you're looking at doing. If you are looking at a course-based program, something like Masters of Library and Information Studies or Masters of Marine Management, they'll want your CV. If you're applying to a PhD, you might want to include your CV as well if you have research projects and papers. For everyone else, it's generally not required, but if you want to send it, you're welcome to. Some programs will be looking for a writing sample. I do realize that it can be tricky to get an English writing sample. So if this is your situation, again, please get in touch with the department you're applying to. All right, I mentioned the English for Academic Purposes. So that is an option for anyone who does not already have their English as a second language test score and would like to study. This year, they do have an online option. The online option also satisfies our ESL requirements. But if you have the opportunity, summer in Halifax is lovely. Come see the city, get settled in for a few months. It's an interesting program. Though, as it's offered online and everyone's going to have to be online anyways, really up to you. So receiving your decision. Some departments will let you know that you've been recommended. If they let you know that, that's still pending approval of the Faculty of Graduate Studies. When you get your official admission letter, that will come from the registrar's office and will be signed by the university registrar. You're going to get this to your email address. So please, when you're filling out the application, make sure your email address is correct and it's the email address that you check often. If people have questions about scholarships, please have a look at our website. Graduate scholarships tend to be both specific and there are also a lot of them. So I highly recommend you take a good amount of time, make that giant cup of coffee in the picture, and take a few hours to look through all of the possible scholarships. Consider what you're eligible for, what you think you'll be competitive for, and what you want to apply for, because scholarships will depend on what program you're going into, even something as specific as what kind of research you're going to be doing, things like your volunteer experience, all kinds of things. So take the time, don't leave money on the table, just, have a really, really big mug of tea and read through all of the scholarships you can apply for. Because if you're eligible for something, you might as well put your name in. Okay, here is my contact information. If there are questions we don't get to during the Q&A, please feel free to get in touch with me. And I'm looking forward to seeing your questions.
Great, Jasmine. Thank you very much for this presentation. So we're gonna go right now into the questions section. So we have lots of time to answer all of your questions. Okay, so the first question is from Ghislain Costa de Mendoza. And he's already a doctoral student at the University in Brazil and would like to know if Dalhousie University has a possibility of an international academic agreement, co-tutelle, as he would like to study and obtain a doctorate in both institutions. I have the feeling that's a bit of a complicated question. Yeah.
You are absolutely right. So yes, we do have agreements like that. If you want to find out if your university has such an agreement, you can get in touch with our International Relations Office, or if you want to send me an email, I can pass your question on to International Relations. They'll be able to find out if there's already an agreement. Chances are there is not already an agreement, in which case it is quite a process and it will need to be led by both a supervisor at Dalhousie and a supervisor at your current university. It is a significant process. I can't tell you if an agreement will be reached because it's something that will be negotiated by both universities. And it's generally complex. The best way forward is normally for your current supervisor to get in touch with the most likely supervisor at Dalhousie and work from there.
Thank you, Jasmine. So the next question from Irma Gutierrez. I saw on your webpage that it's possible to take a PhD in sociology. Is it an interdisciplinary PhD? Because I did not see the option in the presentation.
Yeah, so actually both of those options are available. Because we have more than 45 PhD programs, I did not list them all. But there is a PhD in sociology, and there is also an interdisciplinary PhD program. So they're separate programs. For the interdisciplinary PhD, your research will need to be really part of more than one discipline. So for instance, if it's sociology, but it's also business, or it's also environment, or, you know, what, I'm sorry, I don't know the details of your research, so I'm just naming things at random. But the way it'll work is you will have two co-supervisors, and each of them has to belong to a different faculty.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, so sorry. I thought you were done, Jasmine. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. The interdisciplinary PhD program is a little bit different, so I might explain it a little bit more if that's okay.
Sure, sure.
So once you find your two supervisors that each have to be from a different faculty, the next thing you do, and this is before you even apply, is they'll help you find a committee. That committee will belong to at least a third discipline. And then once your committee has been agreed on, you'll go ahead, apply, and as well as all the usual things that they're looking for, they will want to make sure that your research really is something that spans different faculties and isn't housed in any one.
Great, thank you, Jasmine. Jasmine, so the next question from Felix Vasquez. He would like to know if you offer programs on English language teaching.
That's a good question. I know Jennifer McDonald from the Center for Continuing Education, they're the ones who do the English for Academic Purposes course, is going to be doing a future webinar with you. Anna, do you happen to know when that is?
Yes, so that webinar will be on July 23rd, and that will be on different programs that our member universities offer and basically on English and French language programs.
Perfect. So please go hear what Jennifer has to say about that. As far as I know, at the moment, the only programs offered are to faculty of other universities. Like, we don't have, as far as I know, an ongoing program that you can just enroll in. You would have to be part of, like, you'd have to be a faculty member for a university that brings our program in to do that. But I am not on the ESL side of things. So please listen to Jennifer. She'll have the newest information.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yes, and for those of you interested on language programs, I will recommend for you to attend that webinar that is gonna take place next month. And there you will gain more detailed information on that as well. Yeah, so the next question, Jasmine, is about MBAs at Dalhousie. Jose Pedro Peredo Vera would like to know if, how does the MBA with a company residency will work?
Right, so are you looking at the corporate residency MBA would be my guess? So there are a number of different Masters of Business programs. There's the Masters of Library and Information Management, the Masters of Information Management, the Masters of Business Administration Financial Services, the Masters of Business Administration Leadership, and the Masters of Resource and Environmental Management. But the one I think would be most relevant for you is the MBA Corporate Residency. So that MBA program is centered around two very major paid internships with corporations. The capstone internship is 8 months long and is supported by specific coursework. And did that answer your question? When you say, how does that work? I'm hoping that you are asking about the internships, but if you are asking about something else, please do let me know.
And you have Jasmine's information, contact information right now on your website. I mean, sorry, on your screen. Yeah, so the next question, Jasmine, is from Ian D. Mena. And she's from Mexico and would like to know if, because where she's from, if the application process for a PhD could be different because of the FTA between Canada and Mexico. I'm guessing that she's referring to the free trade agreement between Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, it's not different because our application process is the same for pretty much everyone, whether you're Canadian or international. We also have Canadian students who have to do take an ESL test because, of course, Canada is bilingual. So we get some applicants who did all of their schooling in French, and they have to do ESL too. So yeah, the application process is actually, no, wait, there is one thing that is different. Obviously, I hope that no one will be late with their applications. We prefer that people apply with lots of time, but if you do need a visa or study permit, we do cut off applications with the amount of time it takes to get a study permit plus 2 months, which means occasionally we'll get a very late Canadian applicant, but we tend not to get as many late international applicants because, of course, you need to get a study permit. But other than that, everything is just the same.
Thank you, Jasmine. Just to let the audience know, you might notice perhaps that I'm jumping from question to question. Sometimes it's because some questions can be more complicated. And if you note your name, we will have your email address and we can contact you via email to answer your question. So please note your name so we can answer them later in case there's not enough time. Jasmine, the next question is actually very interesting given the current time. So the question from Claudia, she would like to know if students can apply for graduate programs this year, given that currently they're not allowed to travel to Canada if they have not received their study permit on or prior to March 18th. Do you have any information on that?
We do. So the entire fall semester, unless you're in a program like oral and maxillofacial surgery is in person for obvious reasons, but basically all of our programs that are not an accredited, given some of the medical and health professions accreditation requires a certain number of hours of hands-on time. Probably if you are in one of those disciplines, you know who you are. If not, please have a look at our website. But for everyone else, the fall semester is going to be online only. So we are asking or requiring that everyone apply for their study permits, but we aren't requiring that you have your study permit in hand for this coming September. So yeah, please do start the process. And I can tell you that if anyone is looking at coming potentially in the winter, residences will be open if you choose to live in residence and not off campus, and that they do have plans in place. At the moment, anyone from outside of the province needs to self-isolate for 14 days. So of course, we don't know what's going to happen in January. At this point, we don't even know if classes are going to be online in January, but we're working on the assumption that they might be in person. So at that point, you'd need to come. If everything else is the same, self-isolate for 14 days, and that can be supported in the residences at the moment.
Thank you, Jasmine. Someone has a question about programs in French. Do you offer some of your programs in French?
The only program offered in French is the French program. So there's a master's and a PhD in French. It covers French language, history, culture, but Halifax is not in a French-speaking area of the country, and our university is not bilingual or French language. Probably have a look at University of Ottawa, or who else's presentation do you have coming up?
Laval Université in August 4th. That will be, yeah, our fully French-speaking university. Yes. Thank you, Jasmine. So the next question is from Diana Gonzalez, and she would like to know if it's possible to apply to more than one scholarship.
Absolutely. With scholarships, it's normally smart to apply for everything you think you're eligible for. In particular, anything that you have to write something for tends to be undersubscribed. So if you have any current essays that you can tailor to work well for some of the scholarship applications, absolutely do it.
Great, thank you, Jasmine. Sergio Ramirez would like to know if you have any scholarships specifically for Mexican citizens.
So obviously what you'd want to look at there is CONACYT, which is not a scholarship we offer. But Viviana, I don't know if you want to speak a bit more about.
Sure. Yeah. So through CALDO, we have two agreements with Mexico. One is via CONACYT, which if you're Mexican, I'm pretty sure you're very familiar with this funding agency. And the other one is through Educafin. If you're from the state of Guanajuato, we also have an agreement with them, and that will be for Talentos de Exportación. If you have more questions on this specific scholarships, please send us an email before the end of the session. I'm gonna leave our information on the screen, so you have our contact information as well, and you can contact us if you have some questions in regards to these scholarships.
Viviana, I stopped the screen share in case you'd like to share your contact information now.
Sure, thank you very much. So I'm just gonna ask you the next question, and then I'll share my screen. So can you tell us a little bit more, Jasmine, for those students who currently do not meet the language requirements, are there any programs that they can enroll so they can start perhaps doing a pathway program or something for graduate studies and then continue with their degree?
Absolutely. The only pathway program we recognize is our own that's taught at Dalhousie University. So please do attend the upcoming webinar on ESL. Jennifer McDonald will be the presenter from Dalhousie, and she is also one of the key faculty members in that program. It's the English for Academic Purposes program, and you'd need to complete level 2 of that program with, in general, an A-. For some graduate programs, you will need a higher score. If you're not sure about that, feel free to get in touch with me, with Jennifer, or the program you're considering applying for. This year, that program does have an online option, and it also has in-person. And I don't want to say too much because I'm not an expert on that program, and Jennifer is, and she'll be presenting it in the upcoming webinar. But if you have any questions, please feel free to write them or to send them to me or Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. The next question from Michelle Mejia. She would like to know if you can talk a little more about the cost of life in Halifax, and if she's interested in doing a master's degree, like how much she could be looking at and spending during her time in Halifax.
Absolutely. So if you're looking at the cost of the degree, the thing I'm going to refer you to, actually, Viviana, any chance?
Sure. You want me to stop sharing my screen? Yes, you can share yours. Hold on just a second.
If you don't mind. Yep. I'm actually going to go onto the internet and show you the fee calculator. There's a few different things that will affect that will affect the cost of the program. The main one is that different programs have different costs. So you'll probably be choosing international students, graduate, and let's say you're looking at a Master's of Agriculture. Again, sorry, I don't know what it is you're looking at, but for 1 year, your tuition will be about $18,000. So this is a 1-year master's program you can complete in 1 year, but it's also a thesis-based program, which, oh my goodness, I didn't share my screen, did I?
No, no, no. I was about to tell you yeah, that you
Yeah,
didn't.
sorry about that.
No.
I will do that. So yeah, I was just clicking and talking about things and no one could see them, but here it is. So the Masters of Agriculture is a 1-year degree you can complete in 1 year, but because it's also a thesis-based degree, we know that sometimes people research or writing doesn't go as quickly as they want. So if it takes you more than that first year, your tuition in subsequent years will be lower. It'll be about $10,000 a year. More generally, for costs of living, Halifax is actually a good city for that as Canadian cities go. It's one of the lower cost cities within Canada. It's hard to give an estimate because, of course, what you're looking for might be very different. If you're willing to share an apartment with roommates and you don't mind walking a half an hour to get to the university, you might be able to find a place for about 500 Canadian dollars a month. If you want an apartment to yourself, you don't want to walk more than 10 minutes to campus, then you might be looking at spending $1,500 a month. It's really going to be very dependent on, unfortunately, what you're looking for. For food, again, I have no luck estimating for other people. Unfortunately, eating out is much more expensive in Canada than it is in, sorry, did this question come from Mexico?
No, we don't know.
Oh, sorry, we don't know. That was the last question. I find eating out in Canada relatively expensive, but there's wonderful farmers markets and lovely fresh seafood that's really reasonably priced. So what I would really encourage you to do is go to the city of Halifax's estimates of cost of living. Now, the big problem with those estimates is that they assume you're coming with a family. So if you're coming with a family, their estimates are wonderful. If you are coming alone, you can look at the university estimates, but unfortunately, those are assuming that you'd like to live in residence and not in an apartment. And we find that most master's and PhD students would rather live on their own in an apartment. So I don't have a perfect solution for you. Just maybe have a look at the listings for apartments you'd be interested in. Have a look at the city's website. And if you're looking for a ballpark, certainly you can use the universities. Just be aware, they're kind of thinking that you might be like 19 years old and want to spend more time like going to the bars for the first time than cooking your own meals.
Thank you, Jasmine. And just to add a little bit on that, being a former international student myself at some point in my life, many, many years ago, I can tell you that it is possible. The only thing is that you need to be open to change, for example, your diet, right? Like perhaps depending on where you're coming from, you may be used to eating a lot of meat. Meat tends to be a bit more expensive in Canada than in other parts of the world, again, depending on where you're coming from. And also be open to perhaps, I know you may want to have, your privacy, your own apartment, but might not be a bad idea to share your apartment with another person. That way you can also have, somebody to interact with and practice, your language skills and all of this. So I would say just be open to the experience, and it's definitely worth it. So now you can see, before I ask the next question, you can see now our contact information on your screen. And again, if at some point we're not able to answer all the questions, please note your name so we will have your email address and we can follow up later via email.
Viviana, I think that's a really great point. Being open to maybe having roommates, I think is a nice thing coming to a new city and a new university. So when I moved to Halifax to do my master's at Dalhousie, and I lived in a house that I shared with 5 other graduate students. And I'm certainly not saying we never argued about whose turn it was to clean the kitchen, but it was really helpful having a few people who knew the city and also having some new, like people who were new to the city who wanted to join me in finding out things like where the grocery store was.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Jasmine. And also, this is a very interesting experience that you're going to live, and you would like to have somebody to share that with. There are going to be days where you just want to vent and talk to somebody at home that can understand what you're going through. So if there are a couple of international students, you will have an opportunity to also learn and connect with people from other countries, which is great. Like Canada is great for that. Something that I really love about Canada is the diversity and the multiculturalism that we have here. And you get to learn not only about life in Canada, but also life in other parts of the world, thanks to all the wonderful variety and diversity of students that our universities offer. So the next question, just because I'm looking at the time here. So Jasmine, a student would like to know if there's a way through DAL's website where you can look where they can look for information on potential supervisors.
Absolutely. So this time I actually will share my screen.
Let me stop sharing mine.
Okay. So the best thing to do is go to the program you're interested in. So for instance, if you want to do computer science, or actually, I think we already looked at computer science's website, didn't we? Engineering.
Would you like to share your screen?
Oh my goodness, sorry, I didn't do that again. Thank you very much for the reminder. Yeah, so what you'll do is you'll look at the faculty page. So for instance, say you're interested in civil and resource engineering, you'll look at their faculty, and let's say you're interested in working on, oh, that's not actually a really boring one. That's too bad. Anyways, if you're looking for municipal projects, you'll be like, ah, yes, that is a project I'm interested in. Or you might be interested in process engineering. So you'll have a look at their faculty. And you'll also be able to filter by, you'll be able to search by research terms. So if you want someone in aeronautical engineering, you'll put that in, or you'll look through and have a look at research topics, research interests, person's background. That's absolutely what I would recommend.
Thank you, Jasmine. The next question from Leonardo Castillo. He would like to know if a student can apply to more than one graduate program, so basically to multiple programs.
You can, but the challenge with graduate programs is that each department is independent. So you will have to put in 2 separate applications, and you will have to send your supporting documents to each of the programs you're applying to. Great. So because each department makes their own decisions, they each need their own application with all of your materials. It's not like there's a central office who decides. If you're doing resource and environmental management, but then you also apply for, I don't know, electrical engineering. There are different campuses, different offices, different people, and each one will need their copy to make a decision.
Great, thank you, Jasmine. Also, just a reminder for those of you who perhaps join us a bit later, just so you know, this presentation is being recorded and it's going to be emailed to you in the case that some of the information some of the questions, I'm sorry, that you have are part of the information that Jasmine already presented. You can review the session and you'll have the answer to your questions. Because I see a couple of questions in terms of scholarships, and that's something that Jasmine already touched on and gave the information, the list in the website and everything. Okay, sorry. So the next question that I have for you, Jasmine, is in terms, I'm sorry, I just lost my question. I'll ask you a different one. So does the university offer employment opportunities for PhD students?
Yeah, so again, that's going to depend on which program you're going into. Some programs will not just offer, but require that you be a teaching assistant, or once you're a candidate, once you've finished all of your coursework and your comprehensive exams, some departments will require that you teach one undergraduate course. Of course, you will be paid for that and also for being a teaching assistant. But the idea is that that is professional training, so it may be required as well as an option. Anyone in a graduate program can apply to be a teaching assistant or research assistant. Some programs will guarantee you a certain number of contracts. And there's also other opportunities around campus. Actually, at the moment, one of the other things I work on is orientation. And so at the moment, I just hired 12 people to be mentors for our incoming fall students. So of course, those are all students. Our mentors are all students, as well as the people they're mentoring, who are obviously all students. Everyone is all students. So there's lots of little things like that that are around campus as well.
Thank you, Jasmine. So our next question is, Rosanna would like to know if Halifax has a strong food industry, because she would like to do a master program that could be related to food technology or food quality.
I'm afraid that's not an area I know a ton about. I know that some of the food safety testing labs for the federal government are here, but I only know that because I have a friend who works in one. I'm afraid I am not coming from an engineering or food safety background. So what I'd suggest you do is get in touch with, I'm guessing it's going to be process engineering, but it might also be agriculture. For agriculture, our agricultural campus does a huge amount of work in food security. And as mentioned, like, they are the only agricultural university with on-site teaching farm and labs in Canada. So they know a ton of that. But without knowing what your industry is, my best advice is to get in touch with, depending on what your area is, either agriculture or engineering, to find out whether or not your specific topic is supported.
Thank you, Jasmine. So we'll answer 2 more questions. And the next one will be, is there a limit age to apply for a graduate program at Dalhousie?
Nope. So some scholarships may have a maximum age for applying. I, in fact, had already aged out of the major Canadian scholarship when I went back to do grad school. But there's absolutely no maximum age to take graduate programs. Actually, one of the people in my program, she was doing her PhD. She was a retired medical doctor, and I do not know what her age is, but she had practiced medicine for more than 30 years. So I'm assuming that 60 plus is like a plausible age cohort for her to be in. So yeah, definitely no maximum.
Great, thank you, Jasmine. So the last question is, it's assessing a number of questions in regards to language requirements. A lot of students have questions in terms of, specific requirements for your programs, or what happens now that due to COVID, many centers are closed around the world, so they can do their test. Do you know if Dalhousie has any policy in place in terms of how can students fulfill that requirement, and where can they find more detailed information in terms of what are the specific scores for their particular programs?
Absolutely. If you go to our website, it will list all of the possible tests and the scores that are required as a baseline for any program. There's also a drop-down menu of departments that have higher score requirements. So that's on how to apply. So please go to our website, have a look. But basically, it's a 7 or a 92 on IELTS and TOEFL, respectively, unless your program you're applying to has a higher requirement. So at the moment, what we're seeing most often is people who are taking the TOEFL at home test. So we do accept the TOEFL at home, as evidenced by the name. It can be taken from your home. so you don't have to go to a test center. There is also the option to get a conditional admission. So if you don't have your ESL test score now, you can apply and plan to get a test done in person later. You will need to complete that test before you'll be able to actually come and start your program. And the English for academic purposes offered by Dalhousie is also an alternative to doing a test. Because if you complete that program, level 2 with an A-, then you don't have to write an ESL test.
Great, thank you, Jasmine. So I would like to tell our audience, if that's the end for the Q&A session. However, we do have the questions here, as I mentioned earlier, and we're going to try to follow up with most of the questions that we receive and we're not able to answer during this session. Also, I would like to ask you to please, at the end of the webinar, if you can take 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, to help us with a survey, because this will greatly help us in terms of the content of the webinars that you'd like to continue to see future. For example, again, I remind you that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have some interesting webinars with current students, so you can hear from them, about their experiences. Also, another webinar will be on ESL program requirements as well as French. And yeah, so now, Jasmine, is there something else you would like to add?
No, that was wonderful. Just thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. And Viviana, thank you for inviting me to present.
No, thank you. And I hope to see you our next webinar. Next week, we will have the University of Toronto presenting, and I hope to see you there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jasmine.
Thank you. Have, actually, tomorrow's Canada Day, so happy Canada Day to everyone.
Happy Canada Day. Bye-bye.
Bye.